You can lose 10 hours to a show without even noticing. But 10 pages into a book, and your brain is already begging for a break. That does not mean you are lazy. It means modern learning is competing against systems that were engineered to be irresistible. In one of the most well-known talks on this idea, Duolingo founder Louis von Ahn made a simple comparison. Learning is like broccoli. Social media is dessert. And when broccoli is sitting next to a slice of cake, most people are not reaching for the broccoli. That is exactly the problem. The issue is not your character. It is that the way we learn still feels outdated compared to the highly addictive design behind TikTok and other social platforms. So instead of relying on raw willpower, let's look at how to use psychology to work with your brain, so learning starts to feel a lot more engaging and a lot less like a chore. Why does your brain keep choosing social media over studying? To fix that, we need to understand what we are actually up against. Why does your brain choose random short-form videos over useful knowledge that could improve your future, your career, and your life? Because your brain is caught between instant pleasure and delayed reward. Learning works very differently from games or social media. With social media, the reward shows up immediately. You post a photo, and seconds later your phone lights up with likes, comments, and attention. The payoff is instant. Now compare that to studying a new language. You memorize 50 words today, but you might not use them tomorrow. You may not feel the value of that effort for months, maybe not until an exam, or even years later when those skills finally help you in real life. That is the core problem. Our brains evolved to prioritize what helps right now. For our ancestors, an immediate reward was safer than a future one. So even today, your brain is naturally drawn to what feels good in the moment, while distant benefits like better health, better grades, or a future promotion are easy to ignore. And there is another layer to this. Most people misunderstand dopamine. A lot of people think dopamine is the chemical of pleasure. But that is not quite right. Neuroscientists have pointed out that dopamine is more about desire than satisfaction. It is the chemical that drives you to chase a reward, not the one that creates the pleasure after you get it. Social media platforms understand that perfectly. They use something called variable rewards. Every time you swipe to the next video, you have no idea what is coming. It might be funny, shocking, fascinating, attractive, or completely boring. That uncertainty is what keeps your brain locked in. Your dopamine spikes because your brain is hooked on anticipation. A textbook does the opposite. It is painfully predictable. Page 1, then page 2. Chapter 1, then chapter 2. Nothing jumps out. Nothing surprises you. And when there is no novelty, dopamine drops fast. That is why you can feel sleepy after reading just a few lines, even if the material matters. TikTok knows the brain hates waiting. So it does everything possible to remove delay and keep you engaged. Big tech has basically turned human attention into a casino. So the real question is this: what happens if we apply that same logic to studying? To answer that, we need to go back to the 1950s. And look at psychologist B.F. Skinner and his famous Skinner box. Skinner ran a simple experiment with rats. He put them in a box with a lever. At first, every time a rat pressed the lever, food came out. The rats liked it, but they only pressed it when they were hungry. Once they had enough, they stopped. Then Skinner changed the system. Instead of giving food every time, he switched to a variable reward schedule. Sometimes the rat got food. Sometimes it got more than usual. Sometimes it got nothing. And that changed everything. The rats started pressing the lever constantly, day and night, whether they were hungry or not. They became addicted to the suspense. They kept going because they never knew what the next press would bring. That is exactly how social media works. Every swipe on your feed is basically the same as the rat pressing Skinner's lever. You do not know what the next post will be. That uncertainty creates excitement. And that excitement keeps you glued to the screen far longer than you planned. So why not use the same principle while studying? One of the biggest mistakes people make is using fixed, boring rewards. Study for an hour, then watch 15 minutes of a movie. The problem is that it is too predictable. And predictable is not very motivating. Instead, make your study routine feel a little more like a game of chance. Create a small reward box. Write a few rewards on folded slips of paper. Some can be small wins, like grabbing a favorite drink or taking a short break. Mix in a few slips that say something like, "No reward this time." Then after you finish a chapter, draw one. That moment of suspense can wake your brain up instantly. Or keep it even simpler. Use a die. After you finish one section, roll it. If it lands on 6, you earn a reward, like listening to your favorite song. If it lands on anything else, you keep studying for 15 more minutes before you roll again. That near-win feeling can be surprisingly motivating. It makes you want to keep going just to see what happens next. But random rewards alone are not enough. There will still be days when you are too tired to do anything. On those days, pleasure by itself may not be enough to get you to start. Tech companies understand that too. They do not just use rewards to pull people in. They also use psychological pressure to keep them coming back. And that brings us to the most important part of this video. 3 powerful principles that can help you study more consistently without depending on brute force. The first one is the secret behind Duolingo's streak system. The first principle is this: use loss aversion. If you have ever used Duolingo, you have probably noticed how obsessed it is with protecting your daily streak. Snapchat does something similar with message streaks. And both apps are tapping into the same powerful psychological effect. Imagine you find a $100 bill on the sidewalk. You would feel pretty good. Now imagine you open your wallet and realize you lost $100 of your own. Same amount of money. Completely different feeling. Why? Because losing something hurts more than gaining the same thing feels good. Research has shown that the pain of loss can feel roughly twice as strong as the pleasure of gain. Duolingo uses this brilliantly. Once you build a 30-day streak, or a 50-day streak, or a 100-day streak, you are no longer showing up just because you love learning. You are showing up because you do not want to lose what you already built. That fear becomes the motivation. So use it for your own study system. Do not let your progress stay invisible. Make it visible. Build your own streak. Get a large desk calendar. Or print a habit tracker and put it somewhere you will see every day. Every time you finish your study task, mark that day with a big red X. At first, it will not feel like much. But after 2 weeks, then a month, that change starts to feel valuable. And on the days when your motivation is gone, seeing that streak can be enough to pull you back to your desk. Simply because you do not want to break it. That is when loss aversion starts working in your favor. But even with a streak, starting is still the hardest part. Sometimes just looking at a big pile of work is enough to drain your energy before you begin. To fix that, we need to look at what is happening in the brain. The second principle is this: trick your amygdala. Think about how TikTok works. It never asks you to commit to a 2-hour movie. It just offers one short video. Maybe 15 seconds. That feels easy. Then once it ends, your brain has momentum. And your thumb keeps scrolling almost automatically. That is how social media removes friction. Studying usually does the opposite. The moment you think, I need to study for 3 hours. Your amygdala kicks in. The amygdala is basically your brain's threat detector. When a task feels big, stressful, or overwhelming, it triggers resistance. And suddenly, avoiding the task feels a lot better than starting it. So the solution is to lower the bar so much that your brain does not see the task as a threat. Never tell yourself, I'm going to study for 2 hours. Tell yourself, I'm just going to open the book and read one line. That sounds almost silly, and that is the point. When the task is that small, your brain stops fighting it. And once you begin, momentum starts to build. Then another psychological effect kicks in, the Zeigarnik effect. This is the tendency for the brain to stay mentally attached to unfinished tasks. Once you start something, your mind wants closure. So after reading one line, there is a good chance you will read the whole paragraph. Then the whole page. Then one more. Getting yourself to start is everything. But starting is not enough. If you want to stay engaged longer, you need one more ingredient. You need feedback. That leads to the third principle: create instant feedback. Think about why video games are so compelling, or why social media is so hard to put down. The answer is fast feedback. In a game, you know right away if you succeeded or failed. On social media, you immediately see views, likes, comments, and reactions. The brain loves that kind of clarity. It wants immediate proof that what it just did mattered. Traditional studying is boring partly because it is silent. You read 10 pages and nothing happens. No signal. No response. No confirmation. Without feedback, the brain gets bored and motivation fades. So create feedback on purpose. Break your material into small checkpoints, and turn those checkpoints into mini tests. Instead of only reading passively, use flashcards or quiz apps. Every time you get an answer right, your brain gets a quick burst of satisfaction. It is small, but it is immediate. And those small wins help carry you into the next question. That is how dry studying starts to feel more like a game. Throughout college, my grades stayed consistently solid. Not because I was unusually disciplined or naturally brilliant, but because I knew how to study with flashcards. Every time I flipped a card and got it right, it felt good. Those repeated small wins kept me engaged. They turned studying from something dull and draining into a chain of little rewards. And that is really the whole idea. If you want to get hooked on learning, use the fear of losing your streak. Trick your brain into starting ridiculously small, and create some kind of immediate reward or feedback after each step. The truth is, companies like TikTok and Facebook spend millions of dollars on psychologists, designers, and engineers for one main reason: to hold your attention a little longer. They understand the weak points of the human brain extremely well. So borrow the formula. They use dopamine to sell ads and keep you scrolling. You can use that same psychology to build skills, learn faster, and improve your life. Redesign the game. Do not let your brain keep running on autopilot. And if you have found a strategy that makes studying easier or more addictive in a good way, share it in the comments so Habit Forge and everyone else can learn from it too. Thanks for listening. This is Habit Forge. See you soon.